This is an instructional video of the annotated version of the glossary for the Art of Discussion course at the Academy for Lifelong Learning on Cape Cod. There is a lot going on when people are talking. Thus, we'll be going through some 80 words or so. This is only part one. We'll do words beginning with A through C. These come in no particular order of importance, strictly by alphabet. I trust everybody in the class has received their print copy of the glossary. The purpose for this video is to help embellish some of these terms and to encourage everybody in the class to go through them point by point, term by term, so as to let the concepts absorb. Not all of these words are going to seem to be really important right now, today, but eventually, especially if we want to master the whole topic of discussion, they will all be important and all good to know. So let's just get started with the first word beginning with A, which is ad hominem, attacking opponent's character rather than answering his argument. This is a great discussion killer where people are talking not about the argument but about the person who gave it, or some quick little quip to quickly dismiss the argument because of the person. You don't understand this because you're a man. You wouldn't know what's going on because you were born in Central America. On and on and on it goes. It all needs to go. We never want to be practicing ad hominem attacks or comments. Enough said on that. Word number two is analysis, separating into its constituent elements. And that is precisely what I am doing, we are doing in this course. We're taking something that is not exactly natural, namely discussion, but we're taking a look at it, and we're taking a very careful look at it. One need not be intelligent to be analytical, simply need to give it time. And the good news is, when a person does give themselves to analysis, the end result sometimes is a certain measure of wisdom. So maybe that is the pot waiting for us at the end of the rainbow here. Next word is anxiety. Like ad hominem, anxiety is a very easy way to kill a discussion. If I'm loaded with it, then all I'm doing is speaking out of my emotion and not out of my rational self. Anxiety is something that I want to recognize first of all in me, but also recognize it in the person that I'm talking to. Because if they are filled with anxiety, that matters. And it might matter to the point where the discussion should be postponed for a later time. It's part of life. Argue. To present a case for or against. Put it that way, argue is a very good word. We want to have arguments. Have you heard that before? Oftentimes when the word argue is said, it's the word bicker that is understood to be the case. And we never want to bicker. I never want to bicker. But boy, if you have something to say, I want you to state it, to argue your case, and maybe persuade me. Or maybe at the end of the argument to give up on it and say, you know what, I needed to be corrected on this. But when two people are having an argument, that doesn't mean a bad thing's going on at all. It means that people are learning from one another. Arrogance, an offensive display of superiority or self-importance. When in the world is arrogance ever justified? I mean, how could one human being ever reference another human being as if they are inferior to them? I don't get it. It doesn't belong. I know it's out there. Let's put an end to arrogance, at least in ourselves. We have to start with ourselves before we move on to other people. And it begins in the attitude, so shouldn't even get out of the starting blocks. Assert, stated with assurance and confidence. We're going to be saying much about assertion, speaking with assertion, assertive speaking, assertive listening, assertive communication. It's coming up later, maybe week 4, week 5 in the class, but this is what we want to do when we are communicating and discussing. Speaking assertively raises the level of quality in our communication. Attitude, a position or posture, a feeling or orientation of the mind that we have going into the communication or the discussion with a person. Attitude is a word that pilots use to describe their plane. The attitude of a plane, which is its position juxtaposed to the ground and to the wind and to the area where it's pointing and the direction to which it's going. Before the pilot wants to pilot the plane, he consults the attitude of the plane. And I understand ballet dancers have the same concept. Before they start the dance, they have an attitude that they start with. And we want to enter any interchange with another person with a positive attitude, with an uplifting attitude, an upbeat attitude. It might go south from there, but let's at least start with as high a bar as we can regarding our own level of involvement. Bias, an unreasoned inclination or opinion. People have biases. Biases impede good discussion. Biases are things that we come to and they just need to be corrected. If they're not corrected, they're going to negatively impact the dialogue that we have coming up. Remember a bias I once had? I used to think that North Americans and Europeans were superior athletes to people from Southern Asia. And it's just not true. But it's a bias, get over it. It's not good. Compatible. Capable of living together in harmony, agreeable, an agreeable combination. Compatible does not mean people are in agreement with one another. They can be in complete disagreement with one another and be compatible. Obviously, no two people are designed to share the same thoughts, and as the saying goes, if two people think the same way, one of them is unnecessary. So we want to be compatible. I want to be compatible. I want to be compatible with the people who I am very much unlike. And we need to find ways to get along and to work together. It's true in the military. It's true in the workplace. Compatibility. Communication is an interchange of thoughts. And this word is in the glossary because oftentimes communication is misunderstood in terms of one-way communication. If it's one way, it's not communication. And I know you have communicators on television and the media, but technically speaking, that's only one way. That's a broadcast. They're not getting any input from us. It's not going back and forth, back and forth. The word begins with a COM, which means that there's two parties involved here. And so just know that about communication. If you haven't gotten feedback from the person you are communicating with, the communication is incomplete. Constrain, to confine forcibly, from the Latin word to bind. Sounds bad, doesn't it? To be all pent up and constrained. And sometimes I'm going to be wisely constrained because it's not going to be good to bring up a subject at a particular time. Other times it's really bad. You don't want to be constrained for a lengthy period of time. It leads to bad and incomplete communication, in fact, misleading communication. So a constrained individual has something that they're going to need to deal with so as to get over it. Contention, tending toward strife. Bad word. I never want to be contentious. I never want to open my mouth thinking that in opening my mouth, I am going to make things worse. Strife is not my goal. In fact, strife is the thing I want to get 180 degrees away from. Contention, I avoid it like the plague. We want to avoid it like the plague. It's never necessary. When contention rears its ugly head, in all likelihood, the discussion is over. There'll just be a display of emotions following from this point forward. Conversation, an informal interchange of thoughts and information. Converse with lines. The whole idea with conversation is that you have a line, I have a line. You have a line, I have a line. If one person is long-winded, not good. That's impeding on the conversation. If a person just goes on and on and on, again, the more that is happening, the less you have communication going on that is really conversation. Conviction, a firm belief. Convictions are good. Have convictions. And the next thing we need to do is to communicate our convictions, to communicate them wisely and with respect for others. But we speak with conviction. Criticism. Criticism is another one of those words that is, in fact, a very good word. You want to be criticized. You said, no, I don't want to be criticized. It makes me feel bad. I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be cut down. No, I don't want you to be cut down either. I don't want to be cut down. But criticize, my goodness, to be analyzed with the evaluation without passing judgment, I should say. The passing judgment is the negative aspect of criticism. But boy, to have analysis and evaluation of oneself, that's a gift. To have a friend who can offer good criticism, boy, that's good. Therefore, we have to get over this point of feeling bad about being criticized. It's not a communication issue, that's a psychology issue. To be continued. Cultural. Regarded with excellence, a particular form. We live in a cultural setting. A culture is like an empty box. It's changing. Certainly the culture I grew up with 50 years ago is different from the culture today. So much of our current communication is culturally related, which means that we have some learning to do to catch up. That is A through C. Next video on the Art of Glossary, we'll continue with letter D. As you go over this list, I encourage you to take notes and mark it up, and we will discuss it in class time. That's all for now. We'll talk to you soon.